Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living TV. Today's guest is Philip Shepherd. He's the author of an incredible book, New Self, New World. I'm very pleased to have him from Toronto, Canada, speaking with me via Skype. Philip, how are you today?
I'm pretty wonderful. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm so pleased to have you for the next hour to speak with you about all your incredible work. Let's get into the book and break it down here. I think it's an incredible, meaningful, fascinating book that you've put together here, New Self, New World. And this book, to me, is basically showing me to remember me to go back to my core essence, to not get so much lost in the mind and the ego and the thoughts. And there's so much to distract us today that it's so easy to forget about the really authentic self that is there all the time.
That's just such a lovely summary of the book. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and really, you know, when you talk about going back to the core, you know, in some ways that can sound like just an idea, but there's this architecture in the body that it's as though there were rooms in the original blueprint of the body that we haven't opened for decades. And so the core to me is really actually, you know, within the body. It's a place you can go to and come to rest in. And it just happens to be where our second brain is. And this is, you know, a fairly recent discovery that we have another brain in the body that sits in the belly. And there are lots of other cultures that are aware of that other brain. And you know, in the Japanese culture, what they call the hara, which is the Japanese word for belly, is considered the seat of their profoundest truth and deepest understanding. It's the place they go to when they want to access their core. So it's really about our relationship with the body as much as anything else.
Well, today there's a lot of talk about the heart, living from the heart, living in the heart. When you say that the second brain in the gut, is there any correlation between the heart? Is this a new brain we're talking about, the heart?
Well, I like that you mentioned the heart because, you know, the heart is the third brain, if you want to think of it that way, because there is such a density of neural tissue in the heart that it qualifies as a separate brain. And the HeartMath Institute does phenomenal work in that regard. But when you say we tend to live from the heart and think about the heart, to me there's an inherent danger in that, because what our culture is sort of instructing us to do is to move from the head to the heart. And if you move from the head to the heart, it leaves the heart unsupported by the ground of your being, which is that deeper reservoir within the pelvic bowl. And the heart can't go it alone. You know, it's vulnerable, it's unsupported. It's like telling someone, here's a cut flower, you know, try to bring it to life, and it'll bloom for a while and then it'll die. And so we keep trying to open the heart without giving it the nourishment and that. And you know, when I say the ground of our being, it's where the roots that nourish the heart lie. Is that place deep within the body of calm, connected intelligence.
So is it possible that the heart can be overriding all of the shadow and all of the childhood problems that have happened to us? And we can bypass that and get to a place of compassion and a place of neutral state of being, that we're more caring about others and coming from that good place? Or as you're speaking, I'm beginning to realize that perhaps there can be a whole myriad of a lot of concerns and problems that could arise there.
That is such a fabulous window you've opened. There are so many values that you can take to live by. You can say, oh, I want to live from the heart. You can say, I want to be compassionate. You can say, well, I want to live authentically and truthfully. You can say, I want to live with grace. Any one of those that you take has the risk of turning into a should. So you've got an idea of how you should behave, and you apply that to yourself. So it's a divided state. You're putting, even though you're talking about, living from compassion, it's got this risk of putting you into a divided state. So my take on it is, if you can find your way into a place of wholeness, if you're in a place of wholeness, you can't be other than compassionate. You can't be other than graceful, right? You can't be other than connected. You can't be other than present. All of these qualities arise from wholeness. And when you're in that place of wholeness, you're in a place where the shadow is present and the light is present. And it's a dance that isn't being dictated by ideas, because it's guided by the energy of the present.
That's beautiful. When you say wholeness, it's encompassing the brain. It's encompassing the third brain that you mentioned in the gut. It's encompassing the heart, the shadow, the doubt, the fear, the love, the possibility, the solutions. It's encompassing everything at any given moment, and it's not attaching ourselves to any one given moment and stopping it. It's within the stopping of something and ascertaining something and saying, this is it, that everything kind of just falls apart at that moment.
And that's exactly the hook that our culture gives us. Our culture encourages us to believe that we'll find an answer, that we'll find the right way to do something. And what that is that hook that stops us. Oh, I've got it. Oh, this is it. Oh, this is how I should live. And that capacity to arrest the flow of life because you think you've arrived at what is right can only lead to division, because if you're in a place that you feel is right, then you suddenly don't need the present, because you've got what you need. And as soon as you dissociate from the present, you're cutting yourself away from this subtle, loving guidance of the whole that is always there, like a mother's arms to catch you and help you take the next step. And you pull back from the guidance of the present and go into that guidance of the idea of how to solve this thing and get it right.
Philip, would there be some signs of when you are in your wholesomeness or when you're not in that? Would it register in your body, or would you know it in your thinking and your process? Would there be signposts along the way to let you know?
Absolutely. So when I teach a workshop, a lot of what I'm actually doing is teaching people to recognize those signposts. So one thing we are almost blind to in our culture is where the energy of the body is. If the energy of the body is in turmoil, then that's one sign that we're not in a place of wholeness. And we have choice when it comes to the energy of the body. We can feel that energy and allow it to settle, and you can actually feel the energy of your body settling down to come to rest on the pelvic floor. And when it arrives on the pelvic floor, it's like the sense that you're coming home to yourself. And so that one signpost of the energy coming to rest on the pelvic floor leads to a sense of spaciousness. So in a place of wholeness, You don't feel separate from the world. You don't feel confined within your own body. It's this sense almost of gently dilating into the present so that your sense of wholeness is in no way separate from the wholeness of the world around you.
As you were saying, Philip, when we become to this place of quietness within us, then we know that we're in the vein of the wholesomeness of us, the wholeness of us, the goodness of us. I like to think of it as the purity of us, the highest possible that we can offer to the world and to ourselves.
Absolutely. Now, it's also the lowest possible. I only say that because high without low isn't whole. And our whole culture tells us that up is good and down is bad. You're looking up today. He's looking a little down. Oh, things are looking up. Things took a downturn. That scale of values is implicitly telling us how to live in our bodies, because it arises from our relationship to the body. So as long as you hold on to that notion that up is good and down is bad, you will tend to go up to find answers. You will tend to go up in the body to get it right. So the highest possible and the lowest possible. I sometimes give a talk, and I call it lower your consciousness, because really that's what, in a way, our culture needs, is to return to the earth, to return to that place of calm that isn't, those vibrations that happen high up are wonderful, but without the complement of that deep groundedness, they take us for a ride.
So it's all about anchoring. This is, as I'm listening to you speak, it's neither the heart, the brain, the gut, or it's neither this nor that, or high or low, or up or down, or round. It's really about embracing it all, but knowing that one is to be anchored. And anchored into what?
Okay. There's so many misapprehensions that the trick is sometimes just to find a way into it. So what is intelligence? Because it's our intelligence that processes the world around us, that reveals our life to us in order that we can carry forward. And we think of intelligence, we've defined intelligence as the ability to reason in an abstract fashion. That is like this narrow little band on this huge spectrum of what constitutes human intelligence. So I think intelligence, to begin with, is sensitivity. So if you have a sensitivity to a child's tears, you might have sensitivity to color, or to birdsong, or to arithmetic relationship. All of these are sensitivities. All of them are forms of intelligence. But sensitivity without groundedness is just reactive. And so it's not able to make coherent the information that it's picking up on. So it's this duality. So I would say intelligence is grounded sensitivity. So the anchoring alone isn't enough. The anchoring needs the availability and the attunement. And together to have within the body this settled energy that allows you to be grounded, and to have the spaciousness above that to just be receptive to what's happening is a balance that brings things into a whole. They bring things into harmony. And that, harmony, again, we confuse harmony and control. We're always looking for control in so many aspects of our lives, and what we really long for as human beings is the grace of harmony, and harmony and control are opposites. If you're trying to control something, you have an idea of how it should be, and you're imposing that idea on this system to create order. Harmony is when things, it's like in an organic whole, everything answers to everything else without hesitation. Everything yields to everything, and then the whole is created.
Where does curiosity come into this, and the wherewithal of being open, and the emotional intelligence?
Curiosity, I say in my book somewhere, curiosity may have killed the cat, but a lack of curiosity will kill the kitten 10 times out of 10. Curiosity, I don't know, it's the world calls to us as intimately as a mother will whisper to her child. And to me, curiosity is an awakening within us, not in a way that is insulated from the world, but in a way that's transparent to the world. So it's like something in the world quickens our being, and curiosity is alive, and then you're on your way, and you explore, and you find out, and you test. So that attunement to the world, I don't think it can happen without curiosity. I think in a funny way, we are each of us here in order that the world can discover itself anew through our unique perspectives and our unique lives. And, I open my eyes on the world and I see one thing, you open your eyes and you see another, and all of it is valid, and all of it is feeding the larger sensitivity and the larger groundedness in a way.
There seems to be an incredible shift going on the planet, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years. A lot of people are awakening to this new quickening of consciousness, and as the news does not talk about it, the prime news, but there seems to be still a knowing throughout all of the continents that the control of the masses has been very prevalent for a long time, and there seems to be an awakening of that, of wanting new ideas to flourish. When did your work come about in all of this? When did you start to think about this? And when was your book written, New Self, New World?
The book was 10 years in the writing. So I started it in 2000, and it was published in 2010.
Right after 9/11 of New York.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's this deep belief I have that our relationship to the body is like the template that determines all of our other relationships. And we see the crises around us, and we're trying to fix them. We're trying to find the right ideas to make them right. But the crux of the problem for me is that we've dissociated from our own bodies. We've alienated from them. We're trying to control them. Well, if you're trying to control your body, how are you going to attune to the harmony of the world if you're deaf to the harmony of your own body? And our relationship with the body is completely a top-down relationship. We sit up in our heads and run the show from there. And so we assume a top-down relationship as the way to solve all of our problems, our personal problems, but also the larger problems around us. So my work is is reaching out to help people, because it's so difficult in our culture where there are so many triggers to take you back up into the head, into that place of judgment and watchfulness and control and trying to get it right. And there's this much larger wisdom within each one of us that can feel its way forward with a trueness and a certainty and a coherence that is inaccessible to that separate faculty of reasoning. You can't reason your way into the present. You just can't. You feel your way into the present, and that requires a sort of submission or surrender. But once you arrive in the present, I don't know, you come home to yourself.
Yes, the book New Self, New World, which leads me to think that it's all about knowing yourself first. And if you don't know yourself and you're looking outside of yourself, or you're looking through others to find yourself, then where is any hope or prayer right there? So the idea is to know yourself. And what is that, to know yourself? We mentioned about all the aspects all coming into play at one time: the brain, the heart, the gut, all of the energies and all of the possibilities. So how do we anchor ourselves in this self? And what is the new self?
You ask the best questions. Because what that brings me to, our culture has this belief that knowledge is going to save us. We've got these problems and we have to get the scientists working because knowledge will save us. Now, if that were true, if knowledge could save us, our planet would be in much better shape today than it was 1,000 years ago, because our knowledge is exponentially vaster. Knowledge is lethal unless it's counterbalanced by self-knowledge. So you have a culture that tells you, well, self-knowledge is just like a subset of knowledge. So when you think about self-knowledge, you're thinking, well, this is my favorite color, and these are my values, and this is what I want to do with my life. And it's like a grocery list. But self-knowledge is a completely different thing. So knowledge is a self-centered understanding of the world. You possess knowledge, and it orients the world around you, and it's centered in the self. Self-knowledge is a world-centered understanding of the self. So if I want to know myself, I have to come into relationship with the world around me. Now, if I come into relationship with a tree and truly come into relationship with it, it will illuminate me in a way that nothing else in the world will. If I come into relationship with a friend, I'll be illuminated in another way. If I come into relationship with a sunset, I'll be illuminated. I discover myself as I come into relationship with the world around me. Now, that comes back to the body, because if I've stopped my breath, if I've shunted my feelings, then I'll be hampered in my ability to come into relationship. So it's only when the whole of the body's energy is available to relationship that the whole of your being can come into relationship with anything in the world.
Philip, there seems to be an incredible dawning of two forces going on the planet, and they're both fighting to see which one is going to be the predominant one. And that being that people want to take ownership of their own lives and take responsibility for their own lives and live in harmony and balance, as what we're speaking about. And then there's the other that is controlled by religious and political and social and cultural. And so the two are in total opposition. the one camp of saying that the people who are responsible for themselves are going to embrace what we're speaking about. The other camp are going to say, no, we should not allow the people to be thinking for themselves, because in reality, they can't be thinking. They're not intelligent enough. They're not capable of taking care of themselves. This has recently been said here in America, that as we're moving forth into, the term was Big Brother. We've heard about that many decades ago. But as we move into this universal control of a one world order, that it's all about that we need to take care of the people. The people should not be able to have their opinions, and they can't really take care of themselves. So this is what's going on. And I believe that what really is mattering is that it's all about consciousness, and this is the only thing. We're not here to save the world. The world will be fine on its own. But what we need to do is raise our consciousness as a human race here. This is the most important thing, which gets back to the new self, which gets back to the new world. Raising the vibration of self with our relationship to ourselves and with others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, what you're talking about goes back to the mythic tyrant and the mythic hero. Mm-hmm. And Joseph Campbell talked about the tyrant as the man of self-achieved independence. So he cuts himself off from the world and dominates it and tries to control it. And the hero, interestingly, in Joseph Campbell's terms, is the man of self-achieved submission, where you surrender to what is and find guidance there. Now, the reason we are so susceptible to being controlled is that we live in a divided state. We've been taught to live in a state of self-tyranny, where we live up in the heads and dominate ourselves. Well, anyone in a divided state will be very susceptible to manipulation. If you're in a state of wholeness and coherence, you can't be manipulated because you're in a place of harmony. So to me, the most dangerous people in the world are the people who feel their ideas about the present more keenly than they feel the present. And as soon as you feel your ideas about the present, and you know what should happen, and you know what's right and what's wrong, so your ideas eclipse what is actually there. They prevent you from coming into relationship with your whole being, to what is there.
That is so powerful, what you just said there. I mean, when you really look at the state of the world right now, this disconnect from really what is happening to this person at this moment is so apparent, that they have a vision of what it should be. They're locked into this mental diatribe of thinking and processing and looking totally at the outcome, henceforth in the Middle East, henceforth in many of the countries around the world and all the conflicts. It's so predominant, that what you just said. It's amazing.
And in business, in politics, in religion, what happens is your ideas, you're more sensitive to your ideas. You feel your ideas more cleanly than you feel the world around you. And then you are a tyrant, because you are asking the world to comply to your ideas, and you are afraid that it won't. And so you're defensive, and you're aggressive, and you know you're right.
Right. And you're not even feeling those. You're not even in the moment with it. You're not even processing. You're not even owning it. You're just lost in some type of thinking process of it.
An agenda.
Agenda.
Exactly. And that's the model that our culture puts forth, that we should be in our heads and know what to do and run the show and take charge. And all of that, I mean, I would never want to put out that I'm demeaning our intelligence in any way. I love that facility, but the gifts that our intelligence gleans from the world are only realized when they're integrated with our being. And at this point, our ideas aren't integrated. They're standing apart from the world. And we don't, frankly, in our culture, we don't even know anymore what it means to integrate an idea. We don't know what it means to kind of bring an idea into the body and feel it. And there was a time, in Latin, there's a word sentire, a verb that means to think, to feel. So at that point, thinking and feeling were recognized as the same thing. And I understand my feelings as a form of thinking, but what we've done is we've cut our thinking off from our being in the belief that, well, we can think more clearly if we don't have to deal with all that mess of sensation. More and more, I'm learning to feel my thoughts, so that if I stray into that meager territory where you're just thinking your thoughts and you're not feeling them, it feels so bad. I come back to that wholeness of feeling my thoughts. And when you feel your thoughts, they resonate in your being, and their truth is illuminated, often in a wordless way that is just understood.
So it's quite the opposite of numbing up and not feeling and resisting. It's really ownership, because a lot of people find it's very painful to own the relationships with their parents, or to own as the parents are aging, and now they're left with having to take care of the parents, and they're so strained in their own personal life. And there's this duality of numbing up with it, and that numbing up makes everything worse instead of going into the complete simple acceptance and possibilities and curiosity of everything, what's going on.
Yeah.
There.
But the numbing up is you're dividing yourself. You're compartmentalizing your feelings and your understandings and your duties and your profession. And our lives become so divided that the simplicity of coming back to your wholeness, and so the world has this chaotic kind of pressure and everything to it, and then you come back to your wholeness, and it's not that the world goes away, it's that it comes into focus with a simplicity that can never arise from the head and from your calculation and from your attempts to figure it out in an intellectual way. You see, the funny thing about a whole, if we're going back to wholeness, is you cannot know a whole. You can't know every part of it. You can't know, you can gain different perspectives on it, but you can't completely know something as a whole. You can't know the present as a whole, but you can feel it. You can feel the present as a whole. And there is so much information that you're being brought, that's being carried to you. When you feel the present as a whole, it's almost like the way a skier kind of rides down a hill, and it's it doesn't happen up in the head. You're feeling the thing as a whole, and it's guiding you down the hill.
Yeah, they say that you're in the zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that zone means when it becomes the runner's zone, the swimmer's zone, the surfer's zone. In that zone, they say that it's like a feeling of effortlessness, a feeling of not doing, just being with it, being, they say being one with it. But
Uh, there's a great book by Michael Murphy called In the Zone.
mm-hmm.
And what he does is he goes to athletes, like from every single sport, who have been in the zone. And you get all these descriptions of it. And you realize like there's this one guy, Catfish Hunter, who was a pitcher in baseball. And he pitched a perfect game. And they asked him afterwards, Catfish, how did you do it? And he says, well, I didn't question it. I knew if I questioned it, it would disappear. It was just this easy flow, and I just stayed in it and let it happen.
Just showing up and allowing it to be.
Yeah, and having, it takes trust, because you're not running the show, you're dancing with it. Mm. And it takes that ease of embodiment that allows you to feel what's happening around you. And when athletes in the zone talk about what they're feeling around them, it's like they can see things in such detail. It's like they see every blade of grass and everything around them. And it's that, what you talked about, that effortlessness.
Philip, let's talk about your background. I see you as quite an incredible Renaissance man, where you've dabbled with acting and playwriting and so much more, and performances and social, cultural movements of consciousness and thinking and being. You travel extensively. So you're in Toronto, Canada, and you have so much wisdom. You're incredibly grounded in wisdom and from when I'm saying wisdom, I can't even say that it's more of the intellect. It's something more of a finite of knowingness of you. And I don't want to say that it's something like that. The gurus, the major gurus from India, seem to possess that, but you seem to have this infinite energy about you, of awakeness about you. Quite amazing.
I was so lucky. For some reason, as a teenager growing up, I could feel my thinking sort of being funneled down these well-worn grooves provided by my culture. And I could feel I was being diminished as that happened. My freedom was being diminished. My ability to question was being diminished. And I knew it was my culture that was doing it. So when I was 18, I went to England and bought a bicycle and started cycling to Japan. And I cycled through Europe and the Middle East and India and eventually got to Japan. And I was gone for 2 years. And I went through so many different cultures that this narrow, like this walled up understanding of what it means to be human kind of fell apart bit by bit by bit as you see, every different culture is a different expression of what it means to be human. And I could feel that in every culture I went through, and every one of them was luminous and every one of them was limited. And so by the time I was returned home, I suffered culture shock for the first time in 2 years, because I came back to something that was so deeply familiar to me, and yet it was bizarre the way people were living, the way people were thinking and talking. And, it was, so I gained the ability in that trip as a teenager to ask the questions that I needed to ask, ultimately for my own sake. At that age, I cherished life. Not life in terms of quantity, longevity, just that experience of aliveness. And so, I did. In the course of my life, I've been an actor. Well, being an actor, if you're not alive on stage, you're dead. So you learn, you acquire tools, because every exercise for an actor that's worth its salt is another way of learning how to be present. And designed and built houses, and I've founded an arts magazine and wrote for that, and I've done coaching, and it's all the same thing in another form, and everything illuminates everything else. And I just feel blessed to have had the crazy wayward journey I've had that has enabled me to sort of stay free enough to ask the questions that I needed to ask, which of course comes back to your curiosity. Yes.
I have the sense that when you meet people in person, that you meet them very differently than most people meet each other. I think there's a recognition, there's a I see you going on, and you're very humble and in regards to connecting with them and gentle with them. I see a lot of people in the world that they do not do this. They disconnect. They're almost afraid to look at each other. They're almost afraid to look into each other's eyes. They avert each other as if there's some energy that they don't know what to do with. And it's all coming from they don't know what to do with themselves. So how are they going to know what to do with somebody else?
That's pretty astute. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if your energy is in a divided, vulnerable place, how can you meet someone else's energy? On the other hand, the greatest gift you can give anyone is to be fully present to them. That thing of I see you. But you can't be fully present to them until you're fully present to yourself. And so it's a give and take. It's a seesaw. You learn to, that to be fully present to yourself, to me, is to be in that place of grounded sensitivity, where your energy is grounded and you're available, you're awake to what is happening. And when you experience reality, even if it's just the reality of another person standing opposite you, we think that our reality is made up of what we know and what we have and what we hold on to. And actually, reality is the experience of the world passing through you. Reality is the experience of the world passing through you. So with every breath you take, the world is passing through you. And you're taking oxygen from trees, and the world passes through you, and you release carbon dioxide. With the bite of an apple, that the apple, you're taking sunshine into your body, and the juice of the apple and its flesh become eyelashes and blood capillaries, and it passes through you, and the energy of another person, as you meet them. So your sense of reality is not a static thing. It's this experience of the present, of this other person's energy passing through you, and you can't hold on to it because it's like it's like trying to catch water in your fingers. It just doesn't work.
And the idea that we are separate is such a lie. We are so connected, and the problem lies in that thinking that we are solo and that we're on our own islands and we're very separate from each other, that this is contributing to not being able to know yourself.
So go back. Remember the tyrant, the description of the tyrant, the man of self-achieved independence. Now you think about those. This is Joseph Campbell's definition of the tyrant. You think about those words, the man of self-achieved independence, and you think, well, that sounds pretty good, actually. I mean, isn't that the American dream? To have self-achieved independence, the self-made millionaire with the mansion up on the hill and the fence around it with the security so we've taken the tyrant and we've held the tyrant up as the role model towards which we should aspire. And so that what you're talking about, that thing of being solo, feeling yourself alone, there is no such thing as independence. It's a fantasy. Everything leans on everything. Everything depends on everything. There's nothing in the universe that is independent. And as you move into quantum physics, you realize just how deeply, deeply true that is. Not an electron exists in and of itself. It exists through virtue of its relationships with everything else. So that what you're talking about, that thing we're locked into of feeling ourselves alone and go it alone and make something of yourself, there is only relationship. And then you have the choice, either you feel the relationship and you live in reality, or you numb yourself to the relationship and you live in the tyrant's fantasy.
I think from my observation that the breath is very important. I see a lot of people doing very shallow breathing. I know in your workshops you emphasize a lot of movement and posture and groundingness. Where does breath play, and how important is it for you?
It is so important, because there is no wholeness of being without wholeness of breath. And you're right. The first half of the workshop is about breath, and I help people feel like you can bring the breath into your body. I talk about 5 ways of bringing the breath into the body, and each of them feels really different. And a lot of people are driving their breath from the breastbone. And if you do that, if you isolate the sternum and you just breathe from there, you feel dizzy and ungrounded and anxious. And yet that's how people breathe, because we've been told, well, you can't let your belly come out because then you look fat. So the breath is strangled out of the belly, and then we completely lose the breath in the back. And there's even, because I was an actor, I had the good fortune of studying voice really intensively, and so I had a brilliant voice teacher. And I remember this day, he put his hand on my upper thigh and he said, "Now breathe into here." And I thought, well, that's an interesting exercise of the imagination. So I imagined my breath moving into the leg where his hand was. As soon as I could imagine it happening, he moved his hand. He said, "Now a little further down. Now breathe into here." Imagined it happening. As soon as I did, he moved it. And I said, "Hold on a minute. What's going on?" He said, No, I can feel the wave of your breath traveling down the body. So if the body is soft enough, and the body is 75% water. So you think of that breath wave created by that huge movement of the diaphragm in the body, and that wave can travel all the way down to your feet, all the way up to your skull. And then when you speak, we get so messed up with speaking because we're trying to get it right and we're trying to control it. And really, if you speak with the quality of a sigh, then you're speaking from the whole of your body.
A quality of a sigh. Let's elaborate on that.
So
what do you mean by that?
Well, if you sigh, if you just let yourself sigh, your whole body is releasing on the breath and participating in it. So when I speak, even as I'm speaking to you now, I have the quality of the breath coming out of my body as a sigh. I'm not controlling it and making it a certain way. It's just releasing from my wholeness. And I can experience that. And if I go to another mode, if I'm trying to tell you something and be really smart about it, right now I'm not speaking on a sigh, and it completely changes my rhythm, my tone, my clarity.
Your groundingness of it.
Yeah.
The lack of the groundingness. You become grounded when you are breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the body is grounded. I mean, gravity is always there. It's always holding us to the earth, and in that embrace, we're always grounded. It's just that we're not always in the body. So we lose that. We lose that sense.
Philip, we have just a few moments, unfortunately, left, and I'd certainly like to invite you as a future guest. We have so much more to talk about. And I know your extensive traveling's coming up in the next months. And for those who want to contact you and know more about your work and your books, and your website is?
philipshepherd.com.
Okay.
There are about 16 ways of spelling Philip Shepherd, but it's Philip with one L. And Shepherd, the way the guy who looks after sheep is spelled. SHEPHERD. philipshepherd.com. And I'd love, there's a lot on the website if people are curious. There's some blogs that are really deeply thoughtful, and schedule of upcoming events and all sorts of stuff.
And do you work with people on a one-to-one basis via Skype or phone calling if they can't arrive in person?
Yeah, I love that work. Skype, I was initially kind of skeptical of it, but in Skype you can feel how someone's breathing. You can feel them in a whole different way. So it's been a wonderful experience.
So how have I been doing in the last hour?
Fantastic.
in breath.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, what final words would you like to share with others that is really you're passionate about, that you're interested in, that you think others really need to hear right now?
One of the problems we face is that we're all caught in the headlong rush of our culture. And so I'd like to offer something that counterbalances that. And the quality of gentleness is such a potent resource to explore. What does it mean to be gentle with your breath? What does it mean to be gentle with another person? What does it mean to walk gently? What does it mean to speak gently? What does it mean, even to lift a glass gently? Allows you to feel it, allows you to come into relationship with it so that you're present to it in a way that otherwise you wouldn't be.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful and very meaningful. That evokes a lot of ideas about not being heavy-handed or being in a state of not acknowledging. It nudges you back to the goodness within.
It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a great honor, a great pleasure to meet you, Philip, and speak with you. And I look forward to our further conversations in the future.
I do too. It's just been such a pleasure sharing this time with you. Thank you.
Absolutely magical. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
And from the Art of Conscious Living, please do take care of yourselves and take care of others.